Technology currently poses an existential threat to humanity, and not enough people are talking about it. And if they are, they aren't doing it well. Of course, being as present in our lives as it is, technology frequently figures into discussions about the dangers and uncertainties of the future. Usually, it comes down to what benefit or harm that a given technology has brought society. Has it cured some disease, made some production more efficient, or made life easier? Or has it caused a breakdown of social institutions, robbed workers of their professions, destroyed the environment, or otherwise threatened human well-being? These aren't the discussions I want to focus on here. These issues certainly are relevant, but as I said, they're already discussed enough. What I want to talk about is a different issue altogether that's gone almost entirely overlooked. It's not about harm, injustice, or anything like that. Instead, what I want to discuss here is how some current and future technologies are intrinsically immoral. Now, what do I mean by that? I don't mean it in the sense that, for example, nuclear weapons and their destructive potential are so abhorrent that they're morally objectionable, even if they're not used. Of course, they remain immoral in that way because of their capacity to destroy countless lives, but what I'm talking about are technologies which aren't physically harmful, but nonetheless remain immoral, or just feel wrong. It can be hard to articulate it, but it's intuitively obvious that these things are wrong somehow. Synthetic embryos created without sperm nor egg, virtual children that don't age and can be switched off whenever you please, a grow-your-own human steak kit, AI capable of imitating human relationships, or even the metaverse. All these may have unforeseen, material consequences which would render them unethical, but regardless of those, what can actually be said of their ethicality from a utilitarian perspective of well-being, suffering, and so on? Nothing at all. According to most people's moral intuitions, there's nothing innately wrong with these technologies on paper, and they may even be considered positive. But their existence still presents a horrifying prospect. Real, man-made horrors. To understand why we feel this way, we'll turn, as we have done before, to the moral foundations theory of Jonathan Haidt, as outlined in his 2012 book, The Righteous Mind. He breaks down human morality into 6 foundations, hence the name. These include harm, fairness, and liberty, the most important ones in modern Western morality, as well as respect for authority, loyalty, and, most important for our purposes, sanctity. While the others are pretty simple to understand, this sanctity is a bit more ambiguous, and the same goes for those technologies which violate it. What exactly makes them immoral isn't immediately obvious, but we still know them to be so. So, why do these technologies feel wrong? It's because they're crimes against sanctity, and the sacred. In other words, these technologies are sinful. This isn't to say that they've broken sacred laws per se, because any law can be regarded as sacred while still touching the foundations of any other. To give an example, liberty and individual freedom are very important in the modern West, more so than having respect for authority. It's regarded so highly that it might be considered a sacred principle, but they still ultimately belong to the foundation of liberty. Think of this sacred morality not as something ordained by the sacred, but rather as sanctity in itself. Sanctity existing as its own substance, whose existence itself is a self-justifying virtue, the disruption of which constitutes a moral crime. For instance, it's generally believed that incest is deeply immoral. If asked why it's so, most people would point to inbreeding or other health issues. However, it would still rightly be regarded as immoral if contraception was used. Alternatively, consider a family which, out of sheer curiosity, cooks and eats their recently deceased dog. The dog died on its own, so no harm was brought upon it, nor on its owner. But we still flinch at the prospect. The issue here isn't some tangible ethical crime. Rather, it's the sense that something intrinsically valuable to us was tampered with. These actions are just not done. This sacred line is what these technologies are threatening to cross. Synthetic embryos, virtual children, babies raised in artificial wombs, a virtual realm wherein you can disconnect from the real world. None of these are intrinsically dangerous, harmful, or unfair. But despite that, they're still wrong, because they violate, as it were, a natural order in the universe, and they desecrate something sacred innate to humanity. To put it another way, these technologies don't harm us physically, but spiritually. On some fundamental level, these technologies are dehumanizing. Now, I understand one's skepticism to this idea. For one, many simply don't believe the universe is ordered in any particular, much less sacred way. Moreover, this morality of sanctity can and has been used to perpetrate numerous injustices throughout history. Why should we adhere to something which doesn't exist, especially when it can also be used in such nefarious ways? If we disregard the morality of sanctity, these technologies can be logically beneficial. Why should we place obstructions in the way of harm reduction or the individual's liberation? It must be understood, however, that even though you may not believe in the morality of sanctity, you absolutely observe it. If you had a negative reaction to the examples I previously gave, you're observing the morality of sanctity. You may not consider it to be a part of a cosmic order as such, but rather as a moral order. It may not be a real virtue, but it's still observed for now. The bottom line is that the sacred fulfills a social role. Even from a secular or utilitarian perspective, which mostly utilizes the harm foundation of morality, having something sacred in place remains important. Take the internet or social media, for example. When it first appeared, it was seen as purely positive, full of infinite potential to learn this or that, or meet people from around the world. Yet the negative side effects of excessive social media use are now coming to light, and its advantages may have backfired. Instead of meeting people from different cultures anywhere in the world, there's now a loneliness epidemic, and cultural divides and political extremism have only been reinforced. There were, however, concerns uttered for a long time. The typical boomer complaint of "why are kids these days only staring at their phones" comes to mind. This resembles a morality of sacredness, that children are wasting or losing something essential about life and their youth. Perhaps, if such concerns were heeded, the problems that we currently face would have been substantially smaller. In summary, we may say the following. Technology was, and is, invented to make our lives better and easier, to extend human flourishing to its highest degree. But in the future, given the exponential rate of technological advancement, we risk taking a step in the wrong direction, and thereby begin an invasion into the human domain, and, in doing so, destroying the sanctity intrinsic to man and society at large. The final consequences of that decision may be truly beyond our comprehension. We must reevaluate our relationship with technology, before we become trapped in a world full of horrors that we will never escape.